4 years ago. 4 years ago, now about a month ago, 4 years ago, on June 1st, I came out as trans. I think a lot of you remember that shit. Before then, I was known as like the vrchat femboy. That was pretty popular quite a bit back then and such. You know, it's been quite a long time since then, but that was something that really, I guess, put me on everyone's radar at that moment in time. And I moved away from that 4 years ago for a couple of reasons and such, and I definitely thought that what I was experiencing with that label, identity, and environment wasn't quite there with what I was looking for in myself and for myself. Really trying to find the femininity of it, you know what I mean? And during this time, I always preferred feminine pronouns. It was always she, her that I preferred from the very beginning. I would say that there's never been a part where I didn't prefer that. Even back in 2018, 19, 2020, and of course, 2021. I just never really talked about it. And I didn't think it was necessary because that was like my life outside of all of you, right? It was like my private life and such. Because for as long as I have been alive, I have always had a private life where I presented feminine in any way and form since I was like 10 years old, essentially. So this entire time, this is something that I've always enjoyed privately. And I never really thought that I would say that to someone out in the open. Well, that was until I realized that I want my community and my streams to be just like those private places where I'm comfortable and I can express myself. It's because I'm like this personality streamer and my communities are... I need to sneeze so badly. My communities are pretty much my vrchat life, which turned into a streaming career. And it was like, yeah. And the reason that even happened is because I was fully feminine at the beginning of that as well, you know? So it's like, fuck, well, now I'm out in the open since 4 years ago. But there are always some... Don't stab me, mosquito, what the fuck? There were always some things that I was worried about since the day that I came out, and I was hoping to really work these things through over the next couple of years, and I anticipated about 5 years of time that I would need to process and understand everything that I need and to progress in every way that I need. Now it's been 4 years, and I have succeeded at achieving the exact space that I've wanted several times now. I've had the exact community vibe I wanted, the exact way that I love to be treated, the compliments of myself, my appearance, my voice, my characters, my expression, my body language, all of the above. I have been flooded in compliments and positive reactions to everything I have done, and I feel like I've achieved my goal there. That was really awesome. But I realized that some of my concerns haven't gone away. And that's where we're going to be talking today. I'm going to try to mainly talk about myself and my perception of myself. I may try to have a discussion or like a conversation with y'all about it. I am just overall kind of anxious to talk without very thoroughly thinking about what I say. That is the pre-context of my vibe and mood right now. So I want you to try to understand that, I guess. Um, anyway, so I felt like while I was achieving all these things, there was something that I wasn't really like moving forward with properly. And I would say the first 2 years were fucking chaotic, where I was kind of like, as you know, I was kind of like put on stage, went viral for coming out, then went viral for talking about coming out that year twice. And so like I felt like I became a standard that I didn't reach for myself, and that kind of fucked me up for a year or two. Because what happened was that I found myself unable to stream in a ways that I enjoyed. I found myself unable to like my own videos, to like my own anything, because now all of a sudden nothing was good enough anymore, which I never experienced before until that moment. And it took some years for me to progress from that, but I eventually did. And then, you know, the last 2 years, I feel like I really like worked through a lot of that and found myself in a position where I do enjoy how practically everyone like interacts with me. So then at the time I thought to myself, I can't really place myself or describe myself the same way I see other trans people describe themselves. I felt like for me, my vision of myself was still one of preference. I prefer to be a certain way. I prefer to be like this or like that. I prefer to behave this way. I prefer to sound this way. I prefer to look this way. I prefer to be perceived this way. I prefer to be spoken to this way. But I could not really find eventually now, like after trying for a long time, I haven't been able to find the link that leads into I am this, I am that, I am what or how I behave, if you understand what I mean. And I am still struggling to even understand how that even works for myself. And whenever I think about it, I feel like there's so many individual and personal experiences when it comes to gender and such, and that I probably can't figure out a simple way of describing this. But that is, I guess, not everything needs to be simplified, right? Things can be complicated or allowed to be complicated. But for myself, I struggle with the idea that I can't simplify myself to myself in some way and form. I need to be able to answer some questions for myself. And this is still difficult. And this is something I don't really enjoy. And I haven't been able to really get over that. I looked at other people and I thought I will probably end up like that at one point, where I would feel the way other trans people feel about themselves, that I would feel that way about myself too. And it hasn't happened. Hasn't happened. So what am I supposed to do with that, right? That's like the crazy question. Because my preferences are very powerful, and I have had them since I was like 10. So there is no mistake about that. There's no hesitation about that. It is as clear as my music taste, as clear as my favorite colors, as clear as my favorite activities, games, pastime, food, the fucking taste buds on my tongue, the tone of my fucking fingernails. You know, it is as clear as that and hasn't changed at all. It has been pretty consistent in what my preferences are and how I like to do them, how I like to enjoy them. This is where you come into play. Because up until now, well, now being many years ago, That was my private life that I could explain and clarify to a select group of people or to fucking nobody, which most of the time was nobody. I would just keep it to myself. Now, things are different. The reason why I started out with the fanboy story is because the label that I attach to myself profoundly changes who is over here. You. All of you. Maybe not all of you, because now a lot of you know me and have been through a lot of time with me. But the truth is that the second I was no longer considered a fanboy by myself, this place here, chat, became a chat filled by completely different people. My Discord became a Discord filled by completely different people. And my space, friends groups, not really close friends groups, but a lot of my spaces became filled with completely different people. So the label at which I attach or am viewed as or used for myself changes profoundly who comes over to this community and hangs out from people that are new. At the time, I didn't think that was going to happen. I genuinely believed that me coming out was a side story, not important. But after everything, I also started believing that that was actually the main story, myself as well, because everyone else seemed to. At the time, from my perspective, it felt like that was the main story, and so I made it the main story too, because I'm like, oh my god, everyone wants to know about this, so I guess I should talk about this. Oh my god, everyone needs to know about this, so I should probably talk about this too, right? And then I kept going for like a year, and then 2 years, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know how to do anything else anymore now. You know, it's like, and so it was this kind of struggle, and which brings me kind of to now, where I don't think either fanboy or trans woman is accurate enough to how I feel. It's just not all the way there, right? It's like I don't want to use this label, the fanboy label, because that doesn't bring the community that I want to be around, I think. But I also don't feel like I feel the same way as other trans girls feel about themselves. And so I feel not exactly correct using that either. Right? And so, like, I'm like, okay, what do I fucking do now? Because the reason why this is important is because these are labels that you fucking understand. If I start adding new labels, you don't fucking understand them unless I explain them to them, or you have somewhere to draw from. That is a problem, I think. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that, and I came up with a couple of ideas. But before I continue, let's clarify a couple of things here, because now it's already getting fucking confusing, isn't it? I don't want to say non-binary, I don't want to say gender fluid, I don't want to say anywhere in between. That's not something I want to do. I'm going to reiterate on the part that I started off on, which was my preferences. I'm probably going to turn off the sounds for this. Thank you so much for the tier 3 though. Thank you, Estel. So, let's, I talked about my preferences. I prefer this. I prefer to sound this way. I prefer to act this way. I prefer to look this way. I prefer to be perceived this way. I prefer to be spoken to this way. I prefer all of the feminine traits that I can enjoy in these wonderful spaces that I am allowed to enjoy and I'm allowed to exist in. Spaces that I may have made myself as well, you know? These are really wonderful things that I'm really glad and lucky and really grateful that I'm allowed to exist in this manner. But like I said, I don't feel like my preference alone allows me to go all the way and say I am. I can say I prefer the pronoun she, her. I can't say I am she, her. That is my internal struggle. That's where I start hesitating, feeling insecure. I don't really feel like I can stay on top of myself when it hits that point in my head. And that is my problem at the moment. So I think also in the communication, I'm really used to how things are done now. In 2025, right, it's like, it's no longer, it doesn't feel anymore like this are my preferred things. It's more communicated as, this is me, this is what I am. And I feel like that communication doesn't fit me. But that is kind of how everything is perceived right now. I don't ever feel in any space or in any discussion or any casual conversation or any social media page that anyone ever perceives it as a preference. I believe that everyone perceives it as, this is how I feel about myself, this is who I am, this is how I'm communicating who I am to the rest of the world. So when I use the same language, my point does not get communicated, my perspective doesn't get communicated, my feelings are hidden amongst, what is the general perception of these words, of the meaning behind it, of things like that. That's why I hesitate to use trans woman. And that's why I hesitate to call myself by my preferred way of behaving. So yeah, that is my struggle right now. I came up with an idea. And I wonder how y'all think about this idea. But I feel like I should say something first. I feel like before I continue, there's like a big part that is like important to cover, which is like, what is my gender, right? What is it? Separated from sex? Or what is that, right? What is that for me? For me. And I know that this is something that is different for a lot of people, individually or per community. But for me, I feel like it is kind of more like the accumulation of my life and my environment. That I have a preferred way to behave, like I already clarified, but I don't get to be that way all the time. And so I live in many situations and places on this planet where people don't perceive a difference between gender and sex. It's like male or female, and that's pretty much how the rest of the interaction goes, based on how they initially see you on the street when you walk down to get your fucking groceries and such, right? So it's this part where it's like, okay, I feel like to myself, I don't feel like I can just decide for myself. I don't feel like I can do that. I feel like it has to be a consequence of my actions. A consequence of choices and actions that I made that will then change the environment around me. Like how it is now in VR for me, where I've made a lot of choices and actions that for me gave me the space and interactions that I want, and allow me to feel validated in myself. And this is a dangerous and slippery slope to be on, because not all of us, and especially not even me sometimes, simply I don't always do what I feel like I want to do, even if I think that I like this preference. Like, I don't always do A. Sometimes I do B, even though I like A. You know, it doesn't mean I don't still like A, even if I do B. You know what I mean? So it's like, even if I don't do all of these actions I just mentioned, I still have my preferences, right? I'm probably going a little bit complicated now, huh? So the thing is about that is I also prefer, like, this is going back to pronouns, like, I prefer feminine pronouns. I prefer she, her. Even when, and this is why I refer back to the femboy bot and before it, even when I was considered a femboy, I still preferred she, her, right? And so this is kind of like where the idea that I had of a femboy back then, not what it ended up becoming afterwards, but back then, I thought of myself as a feminine person. When I came out, I mean, we made this video that where the word femboy shows up on screen and the boy fades away and just says femme. That is it. That is pretty much the point, is the femme part. And the boy was only there because I had to include sex in it. You know, like my sex, I felt like I had to include my sex as part of the label. But the femme part was the whole part that I was interested in, that I wanted to express, that I wanted to be. Not be, to express in front of everyone. So yes. So, and if you look at the labels down below on the video or on the stream, it pretty much says femme as the only tag. It doesn't say trans, it doesn't say she, her, it doesn't say any of these, it says femme, because I prefer feminine interactions and such. When it comes down to places outside of Twitch, YouTube, vrchat, anywhere else, this is not something that I expect to experience from people that walk around. And I'm not trying to make a difference there. I will simply exist without being seen by people. I don't want to be perceived when I go out to get groceries. I don't want to be perceived when I walk through the city and grab some random shit. I just want to be part of the rest of the crew. The crew being every other hundreds of thousands of people that are walking around just like me. I don't need to be perceived, and this is normally a very private thing. If I wasn't a streamer, probably none of you would know this. If I wasn't an active community leader in VRchat and something from, none of you would know this. This is not something I would have told you. You would find out by interacting with me, and when you interact with me and become close to me, you don't require a label to understand me, you just fucking understand me. But that's not how social media works. That's not how streaming works. That's not how YouTube works. We use labels to define things because otherwise it's fucking impossible to understand anything, even if it is a simplified version of reality. So yeah. So, I definitely feel like femme is the part that I want the most. I struggle to call. I always struggle and hesitate to call myself male though. Like it's such a like fuck. But at the same time, I feel like for me to be able to communicate with people, I need to be able to, at some times, either clarify myself better or simplify myself better to have any conversation at all. And in that sense, I have to risk describing myself in ways that I don't prefer, maybe. I don't know exactly if that is accurate, but I have this feeling that I need to be able to have these sort of conversations and talk this way. Um, so, yeah. Um, so, in this space, I'll probably not. I will always say, I prefer for you to just use she, her. I prefer you to, not break like my body. I prefer you to use she, her. I prefer you to treat me in this feminine manner, the way you perceive femininity is, and the way you perceive me. And it is not really my request of how you behave. It is literally how you just react to me. Because if you have been here so far, I don't think at any point of my career, at any video I have ever made in the last 7 years, that you look at me and go like, oh man, look at this man, look at this masculine person. Never in once in your life did you consider me masculine. Never once in your life. Unless you like know me from fucking 10 years ago, but that's kind of weird. But so yeah. So yeah, I find myself validated when you're, well, validated is not the right word. I think I just want that initial reaction to the best of my abilities to be where I want it to be. If it's not, fair enough. I find it hard to blame people for it. I find it hard to, if somebody misgenders me, I'm like, okay. I get it. I see. Unless it's very targeted, then it's no longer that same thing. That's just like a different type of interaction. But, you know, it doesn't, I don't feel like it matters enough for me to be in my preferred state or my preferences for that to matter when I'm not in my own space. You know what I mean? It's like, this is my space. This is my place. This is my stream. Here, I want it to be that way because I like it that way. It is my preference. If you want to be friends with me, then that's going to be important. If we're not being friends and we're not in the same space, and maybe I'm even at your house or in your space, and you don't want to treat me that way, or you don't feel that way, or you don't want to talk to me that way, but we're still being moderately respectful to some extent, I feel like, all right, I just won't get close to you. But I don't really feel that offended. I don't really feel that degraded. I don't feel that put down, actually. In that sense, I may feel less gender dysphoria than other trans women, actually. I don't really dislike my body that much. I don't really feel like I need to change it. I just have a lot of these preferences. And if I could, just magically go, and it's right there, it's like, yeah, fuck yes, of course I preferred a lot of these things and such. But there's a lot to the experience. I believe that there's a lot of the experience of, and I'm talking about sex, someone who was born female, a lot of the experience of someone's life when you're born female, that I will never be able to understand or completely relate to. And of course that is sex, not gender, right? That's not based on my gender expression. But that understanding that I need more of that understanding for myself. Otherwise, in my heart, I always feel I'm not exactly like that. I'm not exactly like that. These boxes that have been presented to me are not specific enough or satisfying enough or make me feel okay enough to then use them for myself. Yeah. I prefer to behave this way. I prefer to have a space where I can be this way. So, does that make any sense, Dylan? Does that make any sense? Do I feel invalidated because I don't know what it's like to grow up as a girl? Partially, yes. Well, invalidated in the fact of me identifying as a girl, not invalidated in the fact that I prefer the things that I prefer. The things that I prefer is like what I prefer to eat, what I prefer to drink, what I prefer to see, what I prefer to listen to. Those are just my preferences that I didn't control. So, so, yeah. That is my experience of gender. Hi. Hello. My name is Nia. What's your name? What's up? There's a sense of reality that I have to accept is the fact that I can't just magically turn into the perfect expression of a woman. Like, how am I supposed to do that, you know? Like, and even in like 5 to 10 years, it'll probably be very challenging unless I literally changed every IRL space and the people in it, which I am not willing to do. Because gender is not the most important thing in my life. It is just a part of me, but I have other more important things to think about, in my opinion. Things that will profoundly change everything in my life, even no matter how I present myself. But for other people, sometimes it is everything, you know, family stuff and shit. And that everything becomes secondary to that, which, you know, is pretty bleh in some way and form. But yeah. Hi. So, anyway. Hi. I see. Let me re-clarify the point I made earlier before. If transitioning IRL means that I cannot walk down my own streets to my own supermarkets without drawing attention, then it is not for me. Because the people that I don't know in these supermarkets and on the streets, I did not invite them into my private life. I did not invite them into the place where I do what I enjoy. And so I have no desire to share through my physical appearance and through my behavior that I have set preferences. I have no desire to share that with people. I never did feel like I would ever would. I just find myself now in a position where I feel like it's somewhat necessary, you know? Pretty much. I guess my history is that my entire life I've been looked at that way. It doesn't require gender for everyone in my environment to stare at me. It doesn't require that at all. Most of the time, I have that experience anyway, because skin tone, face shape, body shape, maybe not body shape, hair, and again hair, the shape of my fucking nose, the shape of my lips, whatever, because I am not completely white. So that sometimes gets you looks depending on where you go in places that may not have many mixed races and such, or just having, places that are more local where they're not used to you looking differently. So like a lot of places like that exist still. So I think majority of my, in some context, I mean, while I was growing up, I have never had a sense of community or culture, because I was never really included directly with family stuff at all. So like I never really got a sense of like, this is my culture, this is my people, this is my this. I got more a sense of here's me, and I kind of not fit anywhere, so I'ma just do my own thing, That's kind of like how I was born and raised, which is why I became a community leader. Crazy story, right? I feel like I didn't say this to my friends, but I feel like I've rediscovered like what it's like to have fun the last couple of years. Like in my childhood, I never really like had that like, oh, here are these 4 or 5 set of years where I just had a lot of fun. Like that never happened. That never happened. I never made such a memory. I played games and raged at fucking Halo 3, Like I never had that set of memories. So like I feel like I've made those memories over the last 7 years here and there. Not really when I was growing up and such. So like, that's also an interesting experience in the way I feel and look at things right now. So I have a question for everyone. After listening to me talk for the last hour, what is my gender? Is that how you feel after listening to me? Okay. I'm going to play devil's advocate to myself, about myself, towards myself, where because in this outcome I am unable to answer my question in any direct way. So I cannot say female, male in response to this question, right? Or woman, man in response to this question. And because I can't, I feel like I am not entirely satisfied yet. What should I do about that, right? Like part of me is like, I should just make peace with the fact that I can call myself a guy, but also not want that from anyone else, right? Like, do I need to do that? Because I feel like because if everyone just says, oh, I'm just feminine, y'all are being like really fucking nice to me. But to myself, I feel like I am not entirely complete with that answer. Does that make any sense? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I don't want to, if it's, I need to have one step more into this, one step more, one more bit of it kind of thing. I don't want to, I don't want for it for me to be too complicated to define. I want to feel like I'm able to have a conversation and run through it confidently. And the second I feel unconfident in a conversation, I don't want to have it. You know what I mean? I don't like talking about things that I'm not, at least to some extent, certain of. And if I can't talk about it, I feel like something is eating at me. You know what I mean? That's the part that I need to be able to resolve. Because I need to be able to talk about it in a clear way. Pretty much. That's why I kind of started the stream. I talk to a lot of my friends, but I guess I need your help a little bit too. Do I think I care a little bit much about other perspectives? No, I think I care equally to how much I genuinely feel. And I feel like it matters that much to me. I'm gonna just read everything. I want to remind you all that the reason why the label is so important is because this is not a story that stops at my private life with my close circle. This is a story that extends to all of you. It's a story that extends to how do I communicate myself to everyone who watches my videos, who watches my streams, who sits in my discords, because it will decide the next row, the next group of people that join this place. It will decide it will heavily influence the next group of people that join this. Not necessarily entirely decide, but it will heavily influence who will come in after us, who will come here to join us. That's why I think it is important for me to figure out how to label myself properly in a way that people can understand, while without betraying myself. That is the challenge. That's my challenge. If it wasn't for me being this person the way I am, living the way I do, this would not be a problem. I would not feel the necessity to do all of this. Because all of you are very much right, but there is my unique problem of being this content creator. And I cannot communicate to 100,000 people what my label is, or what I am without labels. I just don't know how to do that. Unless I really sell femme, unless I start headlining femme and explaining it, and I make it a fucking thing that everyone understands in my way, and I make the fucking label work in the way I want it to be designed, and then every one of you will share the way I want it to be, and then we create this label in this exact way, and then everyone will understand it this way. I can make the label. Oh god. Again, this is only under the context that I feel like I need to labelize myself or define myself in labels, because I genuinely believe that as a content creator, it is fucking impossible to communicate myself and to find the right people that I want in my community with the right set of behaviors and values without set labels, because I do not get to talk to everyone. I do not get to hang out with everyone. You do not get to understand every aspect of me. You do not get to see how I exist when I wake up in the morning and eat my fucking food. You do not get to see what I'm like when I'm not on camera. You know, you get me to see like a part of me. And so these are things that for clarification, in my private life, in my close circle, it has been unchanged for a while. It's fucking perfect. It doesn't matter who or how I define myself to anyone that's close to me. Nobody will leave me. Nobody will mistreat me, and everyone will treat me properly, you know? This is completely irrelevant problem for me. But here it's a different story, right? Here's a different story. Because I want to grow again. I want to grow again. I want to be noticed more. I haven't done much social media at all, and I want to get noticed more. And I want to find the right people more. I want to feel like I want to make a video and reach out to people. And I want the people to look at me and have an easy time to understand me, or at least not a too complicated time to understand me. And I want to do everything in my power possible to make that happen. So, yes.